Yeah.
We're having aviation with spindrift.
Okay.
I will say that I definitely am not a bartender. I think I love spindrift and I also love aviation.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe we could have people advise us how to mix them separately in different ways.
It's probably a good idea.
Exactly. It was fine. I tried. And it's doable, right?
Yeah.
But this in itself is insane. So, cheers.
Cheers.
Love you.
Love you.
So, we're in the bathroom at Tailored Hair in San Diego. And we have chosen to host toilet talks inside of a bathroom because real shit happens in here. I'm Lizzie. This is Sam, good friend, and my co-host. Yeah. What are we talking about today?
So today we are talking about approval and the ins, outs, positives, negatives from a social perspective, family perspective, business perspective as an entrepreneur. We're just going to dig in deep. I love it.
What the heck does it mean?
Yeah.
Shall we do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so come on in. Let's light a candle. And let's flush some shit out. Let's dive in. What the heck is approval?
Yeah, so approval is basically seeking the admiration or acceptance of others in a social setting, whether that's your peers, your subordinates, your employees, your family members, your siblings, or just those around you. So that's from a physical perspective, from an intellectual perspective, or just from an overall relationship perspective. Approval can mean a number of things to a number of different people, but we're going to dig into it from what it means from an entrepreneurial perspective, from both of our sides, a family perspective, what it means from social approval, which is absolutely fucking hilarious since we're literally talking about approval and the positives and negatives when we're doing a podcast that relies on social approval in order to be successful.
No pressure.
No pressure. I think it's worth it.
And it's also, but this is probably a good segue into at the end of the day, doing this, if we only do it for other people, mm-hmm. This is going to be such shit.
It really will.
We should just not keep going, mm-hmm. right? But Rick Rubin, in his book, The Creative Act, A Way of Being, I think that's the full title, he said the best musicians, they make music that they love and that resonates to them, and then the right audience will
accept it.
Exactly. Yeah. So whether it's with Toilet Talks, we hope to talk and share life experience, mm-hmm. and if the right people listen, that's great. And at the end of the day, I think hopefully at the very, very core of this episode, it's doing it for what makes you happy, not what makes everyone else happy.
It's for us and to help people feel like they're not alone. Right.
So what is it? Why instinctually as a human, what makes us want approval?
Yeah. So I'm assuming, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist or any type of educated on the subject. But I can only assume that there is a need to fit in, right, in order to survive. So I think it's a survival instinct. Mm-hmm. I'm sure back many evolutions ago, you had to fit in and get approval from those around you in order to partake in the group setting and therefore survive.
Yeah. So it's this deep seated biological thing.
I would assume that it's on a biological level.
Yeah. If we go too outside of the norm, we're scared we're going to just be shunned.
Be shunned. And starve. Yeah.
Yeah.
Both, starve from a society perspective and from a food perspective, right?
I know. And what's interesting is nowadays it's changed with acceptance and approval because you've added this whole other technology aspect to it. It used to just be in your own hometown mm-hmm. approval, which had a lot of weight to it, but then now it's a worldly thing.
Right.
At any given point, you're like measured on that. And it's insane to, I feel like, humans that we're all like deep down like, what the heck is this all about?
Yeah.
Like it's taken us a bit to catch up.
Right.
I don't know if we're ever going to catch up to technology.
Yeah, we've almost advanced too quickly, right? So, and we may have touched on this in a previous episode, but it's like the platform from social acceptance, social approval is outpaced our growth into it. So now all of a sudden we have this platform where we need approval from hundreds of thousands of people versus just, like you said, the social setting that we're grown up in, that small town kind of feel, whether you're in a large or a small town. I mean, you still have school with, 100 to 300, 400 people, and that's kind of your zone of approval. And now that's exploded.
It's infinite. Yeah. It feels like. It's like a whole nother respect for like young middle school, high school. It's just it's an interesting time. I was thinking recently in the context of owning a business, and really this spans to everything. I was like journaling, and it basically was like, when you're born, think about when you're born, you basically start as this empty jewelry box, like an empty baby box.
Following.
So you pop out, you're in the world, and there's nothing. But then all of a sudden they're like, and I will name her Elizabeth, right? Okay. And then someone walks in and they're like, she looks like you. And then there's another one. So there's just like, and then you get to a year and it's like, look, you're such a fast walker. You're so cool. So there's all these like weird insights from everything around you, throwing more jewelry in the box. And then by the time you're an adult, you didn't even know how much was in there. And as far as like approval goes, you have these moments where you're so used to just like having everything throw on you and just reacting to it. Like I feel like sometimes approval, it can morph. It's almost like, we even talked about this earlier, just like outside of this, like that sometimes people can be like master camouflagers. Sure. Like you, for whatever reason, when you're younger, growing up, whether it's a survival thing or what, it's like, I have to fit in. I have to figure out where my place is. And sometimes that can change. So I've even recently been learning this. Like, I'm like, I swear I get more energy by myself. But anyone on the planet that has ever met me be like, Lizzie's such an extrovert. Right. But I took the freaking Myers-Briggs recently, and I'm like an INFP. And I was like, this makes sense. So it's like it's almost like there's all these like secret introverts out there that have learned how to perform like extroverts because it's their job.
Yeah, and there's a responsibility there.
Yeah, and it's before you even have the self-reflection. Like when you're younger and you're just like, yeah, I guess I have to perform like this to get this date. And then I have to perform like this to get this business or this client. And you forget like at all different points, like just how not yourself you are. Right. And then I think as you get older and you give yourself a little bit of time to slow down and look at it, I think the hard part is kind of pulling it back to like the freaking jewelry box. It's tough when all of a sudden you look inside the box and it's all tangled up and you're like, I don't know where to begin. Right. And so I think when it's like self-reflection or whatever it is, like understanding like beyond the approval of everyone else, like looking at like, what does it make sense? You almost have to like sit down and start untangling it to make any sense of it. Yeah. Which I guess we do right now. But I guess at what point do you feel like you, like, where is it healthy? Is it healthy? Like, is wanting to have that approval healthy, or do you think it's something all of us could improve on?
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of hitting right on the main topic that I wanted to bring to the table, and we certainly talked a little bit about it in the the identity episode. And I know for my personal journey that a lot of the different identities, I mean, I talked about the skater, the cowboy, all the emo, all these different identities had more to do with external approval around based on who I was hanging out with and who I was trying to impress and get approval from, versus who I was trying to approve internally, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that question specifically comes down to like, what are you willing to almost what is so important to you that really the only approval that matters is like what you're willing to die for. Like, is there a cause? Is there, like my kids, my family, I would be willing to die for them, right? So, like, what is it that you're so passionate about, that you take so seriously and you believe so much in, that the only approval that matters is in line with that mission, that passion? You know what I mean? So, like, as an entrepreneur, with your employees, and you're building this, culture, and you have these core values, you've got several employees that you're trying to align with that. And there's a balance between, are they approving you as the entrepreneur, the business owner, from a personal perspective, and then also from what those core values and culture are that you're trying to build for the longevity of your business. Right?
I think that's so I started Tailored when I was 23, and I basically would check people's pulses, like, thank you for applying. You're live. Perfect. You're hired. Wow. And then things evolve and grow and whatever. But really up until recently, like, again, we're almost 12 years in. December will be 12 years of owning Tailored. Mm-hmm. And I am just now figuring out, like, Tailored can be exceptional and a place that people want to come and align with. I think all the way up until recently, I've tried to make sure and bend, kind of what we were saying, like almost like make everything else comfortable,
right?
And get the approval of everyone. But then at the end of the day, the bigger picture is it's like some of the people are just they're not aligned, and it's okay. It's like, I think all the way up until, until we really sat down and looked at our core values, I think as far as like the approval stuff goes, one of the most powerful things, and again, it sounds like so cheesy because core values are thrown out like the wind changes. It's a keyword, sure. But when you really actually, whether it's like your own personal core values, which oftentimes kind of bleed into professional core values or business core values, when you truly just sit in it and you're like, I feel so confident in that, and allow the right people to be like, I feel that way too, it changes everything. Versus me being like, okay, no, I totally respect that that's how you are. I get it. Yeah. So I think
we can make that fit.
Yeah. And then you end up like morphing yourself into like all these different things, and then all of a sudden you're just like, I am exhausted. And it's really not fair to the people that are absolutely aligned with it and going like, well, we see it, like we're waiting because that's what we want, and you're so distracted by trying to make sure everyone else is happy, but maybe they are okay to just go on and do something different in the best way possible. But I think approval, it's hard to talk about approval without talking about like the fear of abandonment, and, which again goes into like the survival instinct. Right. Like, if you don't act accordingly, if you actually say how you feel, you're like, oh, I showed too much emotion. Like, you're constantly giving your own self, like, managing yourself. Sure. Like, that was too much. Okay, that was too little. And it's almost like if you find yourself around the right people, it won't matter. Yeah. But that's tough, I think, as you're growing up, because you don't have anyone give you the instruction to, like, just sit in your truth. Yeah. Versus,
or you don't have the context or the awareness to actually discern the difference between the two.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like, it's like, are you, I mean, there's so many of us that, when we're younger, you hung around people and deep down you're like, these people suck. But, I mean, I don't know. I guess everyone else is saying they're popular. So here I am. Like, there was this girl that, she was like 2 years older than me. And we would go to, like, the tanning bed back in the good old days. And I would drive us to the tanning bed, and I just kept going to the tanning bed, just absolutely nuking myself just to be with this popular high school girl. And at one point I was like laying in this bed, like just like, I'm gonna get skin cancer because I want to be liked by this person that really doesn't give two shits about me. They literally wanted to have me there to drive us to the tanning bed. Right. It's so crappy. But again, all of us in our own ways have those moments. I think it's recognizing as soon as you can, like, that you are around someone that's having you bend, which is different because I think nowadays the other thing that's on the other end of that, like when you have social media and all that stuff, that is like, only be around people that empower you and
Right.
do this. And so you're like being instructed. So your ego, which we've talked about, your ego is like, yeah, I'm only going to do that. So then you don't have any bend for the right people. I don't know if that makes sense.
It really does.
It's like a sandwich. It's almost like bending for the right people that actually give a shit and align with you and not just like trigger your...
Yeah. Do you have a moment, from maybe the last 5-10 years, at some point you realized the approval of those around me is less important than what I believe in myself and how I can like sleep better at night, if you will, like my self-approval? Do you have a moment where you that switch happened where you're like, okay, instead of caring about what everybody around me feels and if they approve of me or not, can I actually be comfortable with who I am?
It's weird because I think as humans, we have to oftentimes get with our back against the wall to have those realizations.
Yeah.
Like, whether it's like financial and like, oh man, I better be better with money. I can't make rent next month or something. Like, why do we have to get ourselves to the point where there's no other option?
Right.
So I think, like, at least for me, I guess in the professional sense and personal sense, a lot of times it gets to the point where it's like and it's not fair to either party. Like, it's almost like I keep trying to bend to make sure the other person's comfortable. But if I were to just actually stand in my truth and not be so worried about the approval, it'd be easier for both parties.
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, I'm trying to make sure that you are happy and you don't leave. But also, like, this is exhausting.
Yeah.
So I think it gets that point where all of a sudden you're like, I'm doing everything I can in my own power to make this person happy. And when they're still not happy, it gets to the point where you're like, well, that's on me.
Right.
To not just recognize it sooner than I did.
Yeah.
If that makes, I don't know.
I found myself identifying the people that matter if I have, a certain level of approval. I'm certainly not going to be, approved by everybody, right? And there are some really fun kind of studies or examples where the general public really doesn't give a fuck what you're doing. Like, not only do they not approve, but they don't actually care what you're doing. They're not checking in. They've got their own lives. They're worried about their own approval. They really don't care about what you're doing. You could completely fuck up in a moment, and that's all it is. It's a moment. And then it moves on, and they're already distracted by the rest of their lives. So it's almost like identifying those people who, and then necessarily will remember those moments, but where those moments actually matter. And then, like, if they approve of my actions, are we growing that together? Are we doing these two things together? Does that approval actually move things forward for us versus like a judgmental type approval?
I think ego-driven.
100%.
Yeah, there's a really. I've read it and now I'm listening to it. It's called "Letting Go" by David Hawkins. I think whatever. We'll put it in the
description. Yeah.
Put it in. But it's like exceptional and it's so cool. Basically, he talks about like at every point, like even pride, for instance, like pride can get this like, oh, I'm so prideful in like the business that I own and this, but it's like, but also like, what if you didn't, and what if it went down, or like what if the relationship ended? Like, does that mean that you are absolute failure? Like, we put all this weight on different things,
right,
when in all reality, like you're saying, which that sounds so depressing, in all reality, it doesn't really totally make the, like, I think there's this ego and that is infused in everything that we do, and we get almost like confused by it, and so it's driving us sometimes, right, if we're not like recognizing that it is. Like, it can just take the driver's seat of just like, I've got it, it's fine, you're good, but then the actual like self, your spirit's like in the back seat, like, what? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. But I don't know, why do you think that our egos will do that to us?
Yeah, I mean, I
Is
think
it part of the survival? I don't know.
I really do think it's part of that survival piece, and it's part of almost social norms and social expectations. You know, you grow up almost the only attention that you get when you're growing up is based on approval, right? So like, if you do something that everybody likes, now you're getting attention. And sometimes the opposite's true, right? If you do something that everybody fucking hates, sure, you'll get attention. But the more positive one is when everybody likes it. So you almost get accustomed to your behaviors, your actions, your decisions revolve around getting that affirmation and that approval from others.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
that's
like external versus like
those factors.
But again, it's like when we're younger, those are the like no one gives us this like self-realization and like awareness toolbox when you're in middle school.
Right.
At all. Like you just have this default mechanism of whatever the next person next to you in math class is having.
Yeah, it's not self-approval 101, right?
No. No. So you're just like in your mind going like, it feels wrong. So I guess maybe one question would be, if you're feeling like you're in a spot where you find yourself in a group that you have been trying to please and gain their approval, but you have this realization of like, they're not, what do you call it? Like, it's almost like there's not this equal exchange of effort happening. Sure. What do you do?
I guess it really, in that particular scenario, I'm going to weigh in on, it's a little selfish. If I put forth the extra effort to gain this approval, is that going to move my life forward to the next level? Or if by earning this group's approval, this, social situation, it doesn't move my life forward. And this comes with maturity, because it wasn't always like that. Oftentimes in my past, it was, well, that's just where I was at the moment. And so, of course, I'm going to want to try to earn this approval, not taking into consideration if by gaining that approval, it's going to move my life forward, right? But nowadays, I make that decision, and I will literally go, actually, if I do 100% get the approval of everybody in here, are we going to grow together? Or does it not fucking matter at all? Well, then
it's just this weird, like you're saying, it's like a distraction.
Yeah.
So, like, any effort that you have and, like, energy is so diluted in making sure everyone is okay with you.
Right.
Like, I think it's so hard, especially, again, nowadays, like, when there's a million different ways of communicating. And so, and you have to make sure that you are okay. Like, in the lens of Instagram or the lens of your freaking grandma looking at stuff. Like, you're just like, oh, like, what are we doing? Yeah. So I guess where, as far as like moving forward, like what would be, because it's hard, like, I guess the biggest thing would be, like, where do you feel the most accepted? Like, at what, is it your family? Like, at what point do you feel the most accepted or safe?
Yeah, so thankfully, it's in my direct relationship, in my marriage. That is where I feel the most accepted, most seen, most approved, if you will, for all those aspects that make me who I am. Because it's not there in the family life, it's not there in the corporate life, it's not there really in the social life as it is in the relationship. And I'm very, very fortunate and grateful for that. And it took a lot to get there. That wasn't unintentional. It took work. Not just, it was definitely fortunate to find the right person, but identifying them and then fostering that relationship in a way that was making sure that we were both seen and grew together, therefore approved of each other, I think was very intentional. I think realistically that's the one. If I had to rate that at a scale of 1 to 10, that would be a 10. Corporate's probably a 5 or a 6. Family is maybe a 7 or 8.
So for the people that are like watching that don't have that in a relationship or anywhere, like what would be the first step into, like, I guess, I don't know, like finding that within yourself?
Yeah.
because it's so hard. Like, I think, again, it's like external factors of like whether it's work, marriage, friendship, social, like I'm really trying to be aware of this, of how much I'm feeling okay based off of external factors versus just me factors. Like, it's
for
so
sure.
different when you're sitting in your like self, like the bigger, higher self versus like the puppet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're like, oh my god, like I'll be driving the car, I'm like, I just feel like a freaking puppet today.
Yeah.
Like it's like, where I'm gonna drop my child off and I'm gonna go to work and then I'm gonna like I think that's where a lot of times like depression, anxiety, right, is high right now.
Right.
And which it shouldn't be technically. Like we have a lot, you know,
Yeah.
we're very lucky in a lot of places in the world to have access to food or
clean water, or
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole list of all the things that actually should put us in that place where we're the happiest and
Yeah.
less depressed of any generation prior.
But something about it, it's like I think, and I often wonder, is it because there's so much that we can see externally now versus historically before having everything at our fingertips,
Right.
like, which again, it's like a weird thing because it's like we can go and talk to someone we haven't heard of for 15 years today, right now.
Mm-hmm.
The person that I met in the dentist's office
Yeah.
in the last episode, like I could just be like, how's it going?
Right.
Probably shouldn't.
Maybe not.
That's probably not a good idea. But again, like it's like at any point, it's just like
It's there. The access is there. I think it's really, really a valuable topic, specifically for toilet talks, right? Because I think the fundamental takeaway is being able to actually talk to that person in the mirror, right? That self-approval has to come first. You know, being okay with who you're talking to, who you're looking at in the mirror.
So what happens if you're not, like, if you were to, because sometimes I still have this happen. You look in the mirror and you're like, I don't know who that person is right now. Not in a bad way, but you're just like, who are you right now? Like, you have these different stages of life.
100%.
So I guess when you're looking, and for you, like when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're having a day that you're like, like what makes you keep going?
Yeah. So legitimately, I struggle with that on a daily basis.
I know, me too.
I really do. And the only progress I make are on those days that I can actually identify those things that, you know what, this was okay. You know, that was a good decision. These were good behaviors. You're making progress here, or there. And then you just try to reflect on those. You try to build on those, and you take those little wins. And then you try to make those, you know, that next step towards who you want to be.
Yeah.
And it's fucking hard.
I know. Well, and the other thing too, when you think about approval, is it's like you're wanting something. It's like this want. It's not even a doing or a being. It's like a want, a craving or a wanting. And so you're never really truly there, ever.
Yeah.
Whether it's like with just make sure you're alive there.
Right.
Like it's like, I don't know how to explain it. Like when you're in there and you're looking at yourself, it's like how to get just to be there. Like I think the other thing that's tough when you're in the bathroom and you're looking at yourself in the mirror, it's like that one glimmer of a moment of like, oh my God, I'm there still. Because often, you know, you don't look at yourself in the mirror often. I guess I don't. Do you?
I mean, there are certainly moments where I try not to, right?
Totally.
How I'm feeling.
I want to see what's going on.
Yeah, it's like I'm good without.
Yeah.
You know.
All I was saying is like, we had Ariana come over and do 2 hours worth of putting my face on. I was like, nothing is real.
Yeah.
Nothing. Like, it's like, so that's the tough part too. Is so then you have all these people that are where we're at, and then they're looking like, man, wow, okay, there's a new wrinkle there. Wow,
Yeah.
oh wow, that's interesting. I didn't know that extra chin was there. Fuck.
Yeah.
But then you go on to the other stuff and you see like someone that literally had 2 hours of time of makeup.
Yeah.
And a wig. You're like, nothing is real.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden you're just I don't know, there's almost like this this shame that comes from just existing, which sounds kind of depressing, but
no,
like
I mean it is, but that's also real.
Yeah, but that's weird that like, and I always wonder about this too. It's like they always say like if you talk to other people how you talk to yourself, you would have no friends.
Oh.
And I don't understand that. Like, it's like we're so kind and we go above and beyond to make sure that we're liked and approved.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't put in that internal work for ourselves to be
Yeah.
like working for it ourselves for our own approval.
Yeah, how
Like,
is that the harder conversation, the harder situation to try to get approval
I
from?
think it takes more time. It goes back to like the jewelry box. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so like I've hired this client of ours who's gonna literally sit down with me with our QuickBooks Online,
Mm-hmm.
and all I want him to do is sit there with me and teach me like how to do it. But I have a 1,000 uncategorized expenses.
Yeah.
I'm not bullshitting you. Last time it was like 800.
Wow.
This month it's like I'm so sorry. It's like, oh. But again, I should have just daily been like 2 or 3 expenses here. Yeah. But I let it get to this point where I literally have to hire someone to sit down with me and just like almost be there for moral support. To,
right.
Like, tell me what buckets to
it's
send
like,
it in.
It's okay. It's okay.
It's okay.
We understand you're not a terrible person for not categorizing this.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, but instead of me historically being like, wow, Lizzie, you have zero self-discipline, you suck at business. It's like almost saying like, you know, I don't have the best self-discipline on shit that I don't like to do. And I'm really bad at finances. It's almost like just like reversing it. Instead of being like, you suck. It's almost like, that was where I thought something good.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, instead of someone saying like you, like to yourself, like you suck at doing QuickBooks, it's like you do actually suck at doing QuickBooks. But you have like options. So I don't know. It's just it's almost like you can say the same thing to yourself in a different way, in a different lens, and it'd be powerful versus so
100%.
Yeah.
And that's where the tools come in, right? And that's where the awareness comes in, where you understand that self-approval is really kind of that foundation you have to build on. And even if you had approval of everybody around you, you'd feel so lonely and so discouraged to keep moving on if you didn't have your own self-approval.
Well, and like for instance, like for me, if I'm ever posting a lot on Instagram, I absolutely am going through more anxiety.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like, or a funk. It's like if I'm going through X, Y, and Z, it's like posting gives you at least those little bits of
you're searching for that
affirmation. Yeah, which not like everybody that does that is doing that.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's like the more you seek outward is absolutely almost what you have to, the work you have to do inward.
I can confirm the happiest I've ever been. I probably wasn't on Instagram for months at a time.
Know, same.
It
sucks too though, because nowadays, like with business, it's like
there's an obligation there, an expectation.
Like our shop didn't have an Instagram and showed haircuts. Like someone nowadays, it's like if you don't exist on Instagram, for some of these, especially the younger generation, they're like, well, they don't even have Instagram.
Right.
I think they're closed. So there's this pressure.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard this too, like with the younger generation with like video games, or I guess it's like not just younger ones, but like with mom friends. I overheard recently, like one of their kids is 11. And she was like, my son, his friends are starting to play video games, and I don't want him to feel left out. Like, I know it's a social thing. So it's just this constant thing. And social media is doing the same thing. Like, and even within the video games, just like Instagram, you aren't that avatar.
Mm-mm.
So, but you almost take your spirit and you, in the human form, and whatever you're not working on the human form, you put that into the avatar and just like play with it in the best way. You add filters to it.
It's almost like the easiest way to put your best foot forward, right? You take all the best things about you and you put it into an avatar because you can create, you can morph, you can literally create something, a version of quote unquote you that exemplifies all the things you think are your highlights.
And then you don't have to fucking work on yourself. Like, I think that's what's tough is the times that I'm most on those things, or the people that I see most often on it, not in a professional context, just the people that are like hyper on it. You're like, you should be spending that amount of time on yourself, like truly doing the work, not like in an ego, self-driven way, but like actually, or not even doing the work, because that's the other thing too, is like with approval, there's also this moment of like, I'm working on myself and I'm reading these books and this and this. Like sometimes doing the work is doing nothing. And just like being there and like taking your mom for lunch. and just existing.
Well, so respect
with the people
for
that actually you don't need to get that external approval from.
So respect for those who are at least taking the steps, because that's definitely better than sitting on the couch and not doing something, right? Yeah. But there is a difference between just going through the motions and actually, kind of digesting the work and making those changes for that self-approval. That takes guts, that takes intention, that takes a lot of effort. And again, it's still something that I'm working on constantly, right? So I remember moments in the business where I'm like making that change between do I need the employees' approval, or am I actually more concerned about the longevity and where the business is going? And I remember specifically those moments where whether I'd had to terminate somebody or whether I was actually encouraging somebody and moving them to either a higher position or something. And taking and removing the approval aspect of that from the equation and literally just focusing on, okay, no, this is actually ridiculously important for the growth of the business. And it was amazing the impact of taking that, is this person going to like me and approve of these actions, out of the equation. Yeah. And all of a sudden I'm making like real serious decisions. And I think that's super, super impactful, but it takes a lot of work to get there. So taking those first steps, going through the motions, significantly better than not doing shit.
But then the other thing, because up until this point, we're talking a lot about like people's approval of us.
Right.
But then there's the flip opposite of how we actually also, in our own judgmental way, either approve or don't approve. So who do you feel like you align and connect with the most and approve of most?
Yeah, that's good, because you kind of, you almost have to catch, and it depends on the situation, of course, but I definitely catch myself on making, quick snap decisions. If I'm going to choose to spend additional time with this person and put the effort forward. Now that does come from immediate, instinctual approval. Do I approve of their actions, their first impressions, right? And am I going to invest more into this conversation, this relationship, whatever the case may be?
What do you think are if you were to have a recipe of the top 3 things that go through your mind if you are going to approve someone? Just instinctually, what do you think they are?
Yeah, and that one's pretty darn easy. How they interact with others, if there's empathy, if there's patience, if there's care for others, you're already 10 steps ahead of anybody else, right? Mm-hmm. Putting others before yourself automatically gets my approval 9 times out of 10. That is one of my core values, and they often go back to those core values, and that is one of those: helping others, continued improvement, those types of things. My core values will definitely inform if I'm going to approve of somebody else and invest additional time.
Yeah.
What are yours?
So, if you were to just meet someone, honestly, I think how they take care of themselves.
Sure.
Which that sounds kind of weird, but not even on just how they take care of themselves. You can tell when someone actually is in their body and taking care of themselves, and when they're not. It's almost like they're just in a robot mode.
Right.
And I don't know if that's approval, but it's more so connecting, which I think connecting and approval can also be.
They can coincide.
They're intertwined.
Yeah.
So I would say how someone does present themselves, and then I would say approval. I think though it kind of goes back into. It's almost, that's a tough question. I think we all...
You asked it.
I did ask that question. I was asking that question because I didn't know what the answer was. But maybe it is a tough one because we're so fucking worried about everyone else's approval of us that we're actually not... Okay, that's it.
Conscious enough.
We're not conscious enough to be and again, that's also operating of an ego thing.
Yeah.
It's not our job to approve or not approve of someone. But just even knowing that we have the agency to say... I accept this or I don't accept this is pretty powerful.
Well, I'm 99% positive if you went through who you spend the most amount of time with, that you could pinpoint particular characteristics that you approve of, whether those directly align with your own core values.
It's definitely empathy. I feel like the people that... See? It's the equal exchange. It's over a lifetime. It doesn't have to be
immediate
in a week
yeah
scorecard. But it's like, and everyone has had this before, where, or a lot of people, I'm sure, like, where over the course of a year or 2 or 3 years, you're like, I am making more effort in this, or
right.
or I'm not, and then you almost feel guilty because you're like too busy or whatever. So I think it's like almost over the course of a lifetime to just be around people that you don't probably even have to, I don't know, you almost intuitively don't have to even ask that.
Yeah.
It's almost like the minute if you're wondering if you're accepted, it's probably not the group to be in.
Yeah,
Did we figure that one out?
Well, so
I guess you could respect, like you want someone that you respect to approve of your decisions, but then at the beginning of the day, or at the beginning of the day,
at the
beginning
end
and the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah.
Not in the whole long-term scheme of things, right?
And the amount of energy you have to
Right. So then now tie that into folks that have been with you your entire life when it comes to the approval of your family, whether it's your kids or your parents or your siblings or whatever the case may be. Now all of a sudden we've got this entire different view, this different scope, this different responsibility on trying to either earn or prove approval from those that are technically closest to you, but then some would say their approval doesn't actually matter because you still have your own life. And then there are others who say that their approval literally guides your life and is part of the reason why you're either here or making the decisions that you are from a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. So I know personally, I struggle a lot with approval from the family, whether my parents approve of my actions, decisions, where I'm at in life. Because there were certainly plenty of examples of things and decisions that I know that they do not approve of, would never approve of, have voiced their disapproval of. And so now it's almost like, okay, is my day-to-day or my week-to-week, year-to-year matching those expectations and those approvals? And do I even care about that? Should I care about that? And that's something that I definitely struggle on a day-to-day basis. Mm-hmm. Are you struggling with that? Are you dealing with that? Not so much?
I think you could ask my parents. I think they probably at one point was like, if we tell Lizzie that she can't do something, she absolutely will do it. So they probably have been trying to figure out ways of being like, you should definitely do that, but please don't do it. Like,
see, that's such a cool perspective. It's so different than mine.
I know, but it does suck though, because at the end of the day, you do have to like go through a lot more, I don't know, tough stuff. Like if Beck, like my 5-year-old, if I was like, hey, there's a stump right in front of you, don't do that. Although his personality, he'd be like, I'm going to do it. I was like, it's like you end up, I'm like, karma is absolutely coming back around. So I don't know. I think it's, at the end of the day, with your family, it's a hard one. Because again, they're the first people to start to put the jewelry in the box. So you have those imprints of like, this is the religion I should have, and this is the way I should, present myself, and so it's almost like having them give you all the feedback, but letting yourself choose it.
Right.
But I think that's the hard part for people, is that we have the choice.
No, I get that.
Versus just the instruction.
So speaking of choice, what are, say, 2 to 3 things that you feel you believe so truly and completely in that those are like the top 3 things you would even care if you got approval on? Like, do you have those types of things in your life that...
Being a parent.
Okay.
Or not, but it would be more sort of Beck. Like, I feel like individually it's like I really, really, number one would be wanting Beck, when I'm 90 years old, to be like, you were such an incredible mom. So I think...
So the approval of your child.
The approval of Beck, for sure. And then the second would be... I guess that should be... I don't know. The first should probably be that I like myself.
Probably.
I'm working on that. I'm so hard on myself. I think sometimes the people that are the kindest to everyone else, it's like... Deeply understand that.
But
I wonder if it's because we are trying... Like, for whatever reason, we know how to... It's like almost like we're modeling what we would like someone to say to us. Mm-hmm. Like, someone would just be like, Like, can you imagine, like, because no one was stoked that I was, like, starting my own business at 23. They weren't stoked that I dropped out of college.
Sure.
There was, like, a million things. But if someone were to have just been like, I believe in you. I really believe in you. I feel like it would have, like...
altered the trajectory a little bit.
A little bit, it's fine, because everyone's stuff is their stuff.
Yeah.
But, like, you spend so much time... I probably lost years of just trying to, like... Again, gain the approval of, like, see, parents, I'm doing it.
Right.
Like, whatever. And so you make certain choices around that. So, I don't know. I think it would be, I guess, making sure that Beck thinks I'm a great mom. And then making sure, I guess at the end of life, the people that needed to be in it, I hope that they were impacted in a cool way.
Yeah. I love that.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, like, first off, I think those who... put others literally in who you cared about most. So you put Beck right before loving or approving of yourself, right? I think we almost have that skill set and that experience where we've been able to overcome and survive particular situations where we came out the other end in a positive way. And so we want to, like, kind of pass that on to others.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody has that experience or that drive. So I think there is value in that. That impacts a ton of different people around you, and whether consciously or subconsciously, you put that out into the world to try to help, right? I think that's super powerful. I definitely am working on having my own approval, my wife's approval for sure. I can't get away from, requiring or requesting or trying to get approval of my folks. I don't know if I ever will. That's just something I struggle with from day-to-day basis. They've just set such an amazing example that I feel almost obligated to continue down that path. You know what I mean?
Why?
So I wish that's an excellent question for a therapist if I ever have one.
Why?
So I wish I could figure that out.
Why? Well, again, it goes back to, like, at the beginning of this episode it's like approval doesn't have to be under a negative...
Sure.
It really has, up until this point, it's kept us alive in a lot of ways. So there's the kind of the natural lean in to making sure the people that we're around and respect are vibing with what we're doing. But I do think the biggest thing for me at this moment in life is I've spent so much time and energy trying to gain that there's just been so much lost opportunity in having those moments of, like, being like, Liz, you're doing a good job.
And spent energy that could have been
well,
honestly
and
more
all
productive.
of this time that at the end of the day, you're, like, trying to do all this stuff to win all these people's approvals to give you affirmation instead of just slowing the fuck down and being like, you're doing a good job, Lizzie. Like, just do it for yourself.
Like Fight Club says, you're doing a job that you hate to buy things you don't need to impress those you don't like, right? So, like, that's certainly one avenue, a highly negative avenue, but, it's got some true, real points to it. Where are you focusing your time? Where are you being intentional with your time? Is it approval of others that in the long term don't actually matter, or is it an approval of yourself and who you view yourself wanting to be and striving to be?
Yeah, and at the end of the day, if we're going to have the instinct of the craving or wanting or needing approval, make sure you're in this, make sure the people that you're around are the ones that you actually care about. Right.
Where it matters.
Where it matters, yeah. Like, you're probably instinctually going to do it. So just plant yourself in an area of people that, again, I think it's so easy to, what do they call it? Like, misery loves company.
Sure.
So you end up, talking. And no one's helping each other. So it's like, if you're going to intuitively want that, just, like, be with people that you care what the feedback truly is and cares about you versus
and should care what their feedback is. I mean,
which again in the big picture of things, like, right now people care about people that don't even know them,
right?
Which is fine too. It's okay. Again,
we'll see.
There's probably but it's like, so we're thinking about it in a human context, but like, whether it's Instagram or TikTok or whatever the heck things are right now, like plant yourself socially in the right spot.
Right.
Yeah.
So to wrap it up, so we've got being, your self-approval right out of the gate. Try that, because that's probably going to be the long-term most important. And then, being intentional with who you're seeking approval from. Are they actually, on the long term, going to improve your life? You're going to grow together. It actually makes a lot of sense if you truly give yourself time to think about, does their approval actually matter in the long term and move our lives forward together? And then 3, make sure you're surrounding yourself with the people that fit in that model, right? Like, I think those are good takeaways.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. I am into you, and I'm cool with whatever we're doing. But again, I can't stress enough. It's like, before anyone, just sit with yourself.
Yeah.
Sit with yourself.
Yeah, you're inspiring on that part for sure. I love those solo vacations and all that kind of stuff that
Sit
you're doing.
with yourself.
Yeah.
Like, think about what you approve about yourself or don't approve before you ask anyone else.
Right.
And a lot of times, what you ask of other people, you already deep down know. It's like you can just talk to yourself about it.
Yeah, I love that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being here with us at Toilet Talks.
Yeah.
Thank you to our sponsors.
Of course.
Tailored Hair, San Diego, California. Amazing men's salon. We've been around for almost 12 years now. And yeah, what about you?
And Secure Smart Office for all your IT and cybersecurity needs, small and medium-sized businesses. With Secure Smart Office, it just works. Capital I, capital T.
Beautiful.
Thanks.
And again, the next episode, we are going to go to someone's bathroom. I'd like to sit in an amazing bathtub with amazing champagne and talk to
I don't know. Let's dream big.
I really like Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger.
I feel
Why
like
not?
I need to was it laser beam it?
Yeah, we're going to manifest that very specifically.
Is there, what else?
Yeah, that's our master
Just Mick
bathroom
Jagger.
series. Yeah, Mick Jagger.
Master bathroom with Mick.
Yeah, I love
Master Mick.
Yeah.
Boom. Thank you so much. We flush it at the end too? I don't know. Bonus.
I love it.
The bonus.
Toilet Talks with Lizzie and Sam. Here we go, let's start the jam. Flushing troubles down the drain. Laughter keeps us all sane.